that there are women in the Bible. I love the fact that God uses women as instruments of his glory. And he will use women to speak up and to speak out, sometimes perhaps when men won't. And I'm not saying that to put down men, and I'm not some bra-burning feminist. Got my bra on, all right? Haven't chucked that away. But what I do think is that when God wants to use somebody, he doesn't care about gender. He doesn't care if you're a man or a woman. Reinhard Bonnke said, you know, if you're drowning, you're not going to care who throws you the lifebelt, whether it's a man or a woman. And when I look in the Bible, you know, I see these strong women. I see Deborah in the position of leader and of judge and of prophetess. I see Rahab, the prostitute, used by God. And then I see Esther. Esther, an amazing woman of God whose words echo down the corridors of history and where one conversation simply saved a nation. And it's Esther that I want to look at in this last session, because I think there's some things out of Esther's story that we can take home with us today. So, who knows about Esther? Who knows the book of Esther? Okay, a lot of you, but I'm going to refresh your memory so that we can just glean some points from that. So I'm going to actually take you through the story. So let's start at the beginning. Okay, we've got King Ahasuerus, and King Ahasuerus loves a party. Who loves a party? I like a party, yeah. I love all the dad dancing, you know, I love the little kids running around, I love a real family party. Well, King Ahasuerus wanted a party, and he put the invitations out, and he gave one, of course, to Queen Vashti, his queen. And Queen Vashti looked at this invitation, and she went, do you know what? I don't feel like going. I actually don't feel like going. I ain't going. I don't know why she was being stroppy knickers that day, but she was. And so the reply went back to the king. Oh, I'm using two mics. Thank you. Thank you. See, Kirsty, she was like waving at me like they do, you know, when they wave the planes. Thank you. I won't use that one then. I won't use it. Should I give it some now? I'll put it on here. Okay. Somebody was watching me. Okay, that's better. Then now I can use my hands. Great. I knew there was something not quite right. So, where were we? Stroppy knickers. That's where we were, weren't we? Yes, so stroppy knickers won't come to the party. And when the reply comes back to King Ahasuerus, you know, he's not only disappointed, he's actually humiliated. And he's angry. And all his little advisors come round and they're like, oh king, this isn't a good situation, oh king. Because guess what, oh king, if Queen doesn't come and she's the role model for the nation, guess what? We might get home and our wives may not have cooked our dinner. They may think that they don't have to do anything that they're asked to do. So, oh king, this is a very bad situation, you have to understand this. And the king thought about it and he said, yes it is. And they said, she needs to go. And he said, yes, she does. And so Queen Vashti was brought up and he said, you are the weakest link. Goodbye. And off she went. That was the end of her. And so the call went out to find a new queen. Two stipulations from the king was that she had to be beautiful and she had to be a virgin. Okay? So there was many beautiful virgins in the area, and they were all rounded up, and Queen Esther was actually one of them. Very, very beautiful. Now, Esther, we know, was actually an orphan, and she was brought up by her uncle Mordecai, who took great care of her. You know, he really took that as a big responsibility. Just before she's brought into the palace, he takes her aside, and he says, Esther, look at me, Esther. Look, Esther, he says, do not tell anyone that you are a Jew. Not anyone. No, not anyone at all. So she says, yes, Uncle Mordecai, I won't do that. Fine. Off she goes into the palace. And in her preparations to come before the queen, it was the culture of the day that all of the virgins and all the beautiful young women would be taken off to become even more beautiful. And they would have a whole year of pampering. Wow, can you imagine that? You know, legs waxed, this waxed, everything else waxed, probably. Hair done, you know, saunas, facials, lying in ass's milk like Cleopatra did, all of that. Can you imagine a whole year of that? No more housework, you know, so that you don't ruin your nails. Wow. And I was reading that and I thought, oh, lucky old Esther, lucky her. And I thought about all the women in my world, particularly after these last summer holidays. You know, some of you girls, you're exhausted. I was talking to you and you were saying, oh, I'm so tired at the moment. You know, the heat and the kids running around after them and looking after them. And I thought, you know what? Why should Esther have all the fun? I thought we could have some fun at Beyoutiful, couldn't we? So, we're going to have some fun right now. You're all looking at me going, what's she going to do? I don't know what she's going to do. Well, I'm going to ask my two lovely girls, or three lovely girls, Jana, Faith and Jessica, to come and help me. So would you like to join me up on stage here? And we've got a little something for you going on here. Girls, what you're going to do is you're just going to pop round to all the ladies. Their little plates. Here we go. Let's get them all going. Would you take those? Come back to me with some more. These are going to go on your table. And on here, ladies, are some hand wipes. And you're going to have a hand massage. Alright, that's what we're going to do. We're just going to chill out, you know? It's been a bit intense, hasn't it, in here? Just a little bit intense. So come on. Let's have some chill out time. Right, under my instruction, I'm going to tell you what to do. You may never have done this before. So, I think we've got probably one table. Okay, so what we're going to do is take one of the lovely moist tissues there. It's got lovely sort of serums and moisturising properties. And just wipe over your hands, just give them a good clean before we get started. Can I have my girls, please? Jessica. Don't look too closely at your tissue afterwards. You might be surprised at how dirty your hands are. Yes, I know, it's disgusting, isn't it? Okay. Now the girls are going to come round, and after you finish just cleansing your hands there, they're going to give you a little bit of some beautiful cream there. One of them's got mandarin and grapefruit, somebody else has got cranberry. What's yours actually? Jana, what's yours called? Pink grapefruit and raspberry going on down on the left, alright? So what I want you to do is get some of your cream, okay? Have a look at me, watch me, okay? You've got to love your hands now, okay? Love your hands. Say to your hands, I love you hands. I love you hands. You do so much for me. I love you. Think of all the things that your hands do. Okay, get some cream. I want you to give yourself a good massage. So I want you to just start with your thumb, just massaging. Massage here. Massage just here. Massage all around your hands. If anybody's allergic, you don't have to participate, by the way, if you find you're very sensitive. Okay? Give your hands a good... That's it. Lovely. Can I have one of my guys bring me up some chairs, please? I need 4 chairs. That's it. Is it all going in? It's got beeswax in there. I bet Esther didn't have beeswax in hers. Okay. I want one chair there. I'll have another chair here. I'll have another one there. I'll have 2 there. Just about here. Fine, lovely. Do that. Okay, I would like 4 volunteers to come into Esther's beauty parlour, preferably somebody who's not wearing makeup and who is not allergic or got sensitive skin, okay? So I don't want to be dealing with anaphylactic shock or anything like that. Okay, 4 volunteers. Come on. Who's going to come on down? Susie? Liz, sit on there. So I have Susie here, and I need 2 for this chair. These 2 chairs. Come on.
Come on,
anybody else? 2 volunteers.
Audrey.
I'm not going to make you do too much. Lovely. Come over here. And we've got Mandy on our way down. Wonderful. Okay. Now, welcome to my beauty parlour. All right. Is that nice? See? Smell. Light this up. Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. Right, that's you done. And now we're going to do something for these lovely ladies here who are going to feel wonderful, wonderful. Right, yeah, you're going to be fine, you're going to be fine. Hey, guess what, Mandy? You get to wear the fluffy pink headband. Well, hey, off we go. Pictures, yes, please, pictures. Okay. Right, where have I got the lovely Janet? Right, okay. This afternoon, you are going to be very privileged to experience, 2 of you ladies, the very latest and innovative skincare technology from South Korea. I don't know if any of you have heard, it is sheet masks. That is the latest in skincare. And actually, I have some original masks from South Korea sent to me all the way from South Korea by my beautiful students' mum. And so 2 of the ladies are going to be trying these on. So, Janet, you can start over with Auntie Mandy there. She's going to be doing that. You've got your scissors. Okay, got scissors? I'll give you scissors. There we go. All right, now girls, I don't know if you look after your skin regularly, but if you know anything about my background, I'm a skincare and cosmetic advisor, and I started that 30 years ago when I used to work with women, and I used to show women how beautiful they were, because most women don't think they're beautiful. Amen. Most of you do not look in the mirror every single morning. You get up and go, oh, look at me. I'm so beautiful. No, you don't. You look at yourself in the mirror and you say, I'm too fat, I'm too thin, I'm too ugly, I don't like my hair. If you've got straight hair, you want curly hair, and the curly hair one's got straightens out. Okay, this is something you don't like about yourself. And so I used to work with women, as I did with Liz when she first came in the church, and she had her own personal stylist. And we gave her a makeover, didn't we? We chucked out all that disgusting old makeup, okay? Disgusting old makeup that you've got in your cosmetic bags. I know about that mascara. Okay, because God told me you've got a disgusting year-old mascara in your cosmetic bag. Chuck it. 3 months only. 3 months. Okay. So, here we go. Is it all the way down? I don't think it's quite untouched, is it? Is it all that one? Okay, right, sheet masks. These ones now, some of them have collagen infused in them. Some of them have caviar, darling, if you want to be posh. Some of them have beautiful vitamins and minerals soaking into the skin. And when you put them on, let me give you one little tip. Okay, one little tip. Every day when we walk around, we get pollution on our faces, and our skin cells have to. This is a really different one. I've got Hannibal Lecter comes to mind. Actually, I will tell you a funny story. I had one of these on, and Glenn came in the bedroom. And he was talking away, and I went like that, and he went, ah! And I was like, what? True, isn't it, Glenn? It's true. He said to me, you look like Hannibal Lecter. Okay, before you do the sheet mask, what you need to do at home, if you've been wanting to do yourself a little pamper session, the first thing actually after cleansing is you need to scrub. Alright, because your skin cells turn over, and what you don't want to be doing is treating the old dead skin cells that are sitting on top of your face. You want to be moisturising the new ones. So fantastic. So, okay, and Liz is going to have one of those on this side. I don't think. She hasn't got room for her belt. She needs a belt. Okay, fine. My beautiful assistant here. She's getting it together. Okay, lovely. Okay, right. What's her name? Helen, what you're going to do. One thing that we forget about when we look after ourselves, we might look after our face. I said to the girls, Janet and Faith, when we were at home, just having a little practice, I said, you wouldn't believe I was 63, would you? They both went, I went, oh, not really. Take 10 years off of that. So, but the thing is, we forget a part of our body that is attached to our face called our neck. So often what we do is we cleanse, we tone, we moisturise, we scrub, we mask, we infuse, we do all of that, and we forget this bit here. So what we're going to do for you, Helen, is we're going to actually give your neck a little bit of a treat. Yeah? So what I'd like you to do is I'm just going to show you what to do here. Actually, hold out your hands. I'm going to give you some Exalt neck cream from Temple Spa, a Christian company. Right, and I want you to pop it onto your neck, and then I'm going to show you what to do with it. Yeah, just rub it all around. Lovely, lovely. Right, now then get the backs of your hands, and we do this. Okay? That's it, and keep doing that. Lovely motion here. Right, what we're going to do for you, Susie, is you are going to have a beautiful cream for night. Now, anybody use a night cream? Night cream, anybody use night cream? Okay, don't forget your night creams. You want to be beautiful while you're sleeping, alright? And the difference between a day cream and a night cream is your night cream will feed your skin at night. Okay, it feeds your skin at night. And so slather it on before you go to bed, alright? Rub it in, your husband goes to kiss you and he slides off your lips because you've got all this stuff on your face. And honestly, I tell you what, I take this lot off my face and put the creams on, and Glenn just like, oh my word. Okay, what we're going to do, Susie, let me come behind you, and don't forget your night cream. I'm using Repose, again by Temple Spa. It has an amazing lavender scent. Your products don't have to be expensive. For my everyday cream, I just use little, to be honest, because when I read up all the reviews, it was as good as anything that they were selling in Harrods. Some of the most expensive creme de mer, prairie cream creams for the day. Lidl was coming out very favourably. Okay, so there we go. Just gonna give you a little bit of a massage in there. It's just a bit of cream. Yeah. Okay. Nice. There we go. Okay. Just do under here. That's lovely. There, you've had a little bit of stress, haven't you, recently? So I think you deserve a little bit of a treat. Yeah, that's nice. Okay. There we go. Lovely Esther time. Oh, what do you do to relax? Go to sleep. But do you do anything that makes your heart sing? Do you do anything that just takes your stresses and the strains and the things, something for you that makes your heart sing? I go out to Ashburn and I love it out there. Have a coffee, I go out on my own sometimes, just walk around the lake, just find God out there, get a bit of peace. I love water, I love trees, I love flowers. If you don't look after you, then you're not going to be any good to anybody else. And a A lot of you are looking after so many people in your life. And then you go down, and the whole lot goes down, like a pack of cards, doesn't it? So look after yourself. When you leave this conference, schedule in your diary me time. It's not selfish. Come on, those of you who are the Marthas like me, do all the time. No, stop. Stop, rest, and relax. That's lovely, isn't it? Okay, sheet mask, ladies. Have you got one on? Did you have not have one on? Okay. You just pop that one on her. It's a nice lemon citrus one. Oh, that's lovely. Now with your sheet masks, what you need to do is to pop them on for about 20 or 30 minutes. So Mandy, I'm going to send you back to your chair. You're going to sit there now for the next 20 minutes. Trust me, you'll feel amazing. Thank you, Helen. Can I have my guys come and remove these chairs? And this table, thank you, Susie. And once yours is on, then we're going to take you off. That was just a bit of fun, wasn't it? That was a bit of fun. That was fun. Okay. Right up, men. Yeah. Let's go back to Esther. Alright, so she's had all her pampering, and now she gets the call. It's her turn. It's her time to come before the king. And you can imagine how she felt, so nervous, poor girl, as she came to meet the king. But you can imagine her going through those great big doors, and the moment that the king sets eyes on Esther, he absolutely falls in love with her. He is bowled over by her beauty, and he says, that's the one. That's the one. I want her to be queen. So, proper fairy tale stuff, isn't it, really? Now the story carries on with Uncle Mordecai. Now he's a little bit concerned about Esther, so he starts hanging around the palace gates. And while he's there, he uncovers a plot to kill the king. And so he goes back to Esther and he says, you've got to warn the king. There's a plot to take his life. So Esther sends word to the king and she tells him the men are found and hanged. That's quite an important part of the story. Then we see a man called Haman enter into the picture. And Haman rises to a prominent position within the king's courts, so much so that he has the king's ear. And the king seems to listen to everything that Haman says, to a point where Haman gets to this place of pride and arrogance and actually starts to demand that the people bow down to him as well, not just the king. So that goes out as an order to the servants and the people in the palace, bow down before Haman. Mordecai hears of this, and something on the inside of Mordecai goes, no, I'm not going to do that. This Haman, there is something about this Haman. There is something my spirit is telling me in here. I can't do that. Have you ever met somebody? And there's no evidence on the outside, but on the inside your spirit goes, no. There is something about you. There is something that my spirit is saying, be careful. There's a warning, there's alarm bells going off on the inside. That's how it was for Mordecai. So Haman comes along, and Mordecai refuses to bow. The other servants see this, and they go back to Haman, and they say, guess what? That bloke Mordecai, he doesn't bow down to you. Oh no, he doesn't. We've seen him. He doesn't move a muscle. Haman is absolutely furious. He says, I want to know who this Mordecai bloke is. Where is he? I want the dirt. Come on, find me the dirt. So they come back to him and they say, he's Jewish. This guy Mordecai, he's Jewish. He goes, oh, is he? He goes, okay. And Haman goes off. I think he was a bit of a narcissistic character, jealous, vengeful. And he gets the ear of the king and he says to the king, you know what? He said, I just want to have a little word with you in private. And he says, this guy Mordecai, you know, this Jewish guy, it's just, I'm outraged. I'm outraged by him. I think he's dangerous. I think I've uncovered something about this guy, and in actual fact, you know, these Jewish people, I think they need to be wiped out. And the king goes, oh, I'm not sure about that. And he goes, no, I'm telling you, king. I'm telling you. And somehow the king gets deceived into writing out a decree that every Jewish man, woman and child is going to be slaughtered on the 30th day of the 12th month. Can you imagine being a Jew in that time? Can you imagine hearing that decree going out? Can you imagine the weeping and the wailing of the mothers holding their children in their arms? Can you imagine the husbands comforting those mothers? Mordecai gets to hear about this decree, and he is beside himself. What a terrible responsibility, what a terrible burden to bear, to know that you are responsible because of a choice that you made. And so Mordecai sends a message to Esther, and when Esther hears this, she's sent into absolute turmoil. He says, Esther, you've got to go and do something. You've got to go and speak to the king. You've got to plead on behalf of your people. And Esther looks at this and she goes, I know I've got to do it. I know I'm Jewish, but I can't. I just can't. You don't understand, Uncle Mordecai. You don't understand what you're calling me to do. Because we see in the scriptures that Esther hasn't been called in to see the king for over a month. What does that mean? Well, Esther's not quite sure what it means. She doesn't know whether she's offended the king. She doesn't know if she's sort of out of favour. What she does know is the king has needs, but he hasn't been calling for her. She can't just walk in and see the king. To do that would mean that she would be put to death. If she's not invited, she can't go. I'll have my Esther up here on the stage actually with me. And so Esther looks at this whole situation in the natural and she says, this is impossible. What you're asking me to do is impossible. And I don't know if you have an impossible in your life right now, that every way that you look at it, whichever way you look at it, it's impossible. I don't know if your impossible is a medical diagnosis. I don't know if your impossible is a financial burden that you can't seem to get out of. I don't know if your impossible is a loss that you can't get over, it's grief. I don't know if your impossible is depression. But what I do know is there's always a bigger picture out there than the one that you are seeing in front of you. Esther's looking at the situation in front of her. That's all that she can see. What she can't see are the purposes and the plans of God and God's providence. You know, like Esther, we can have those times when our eyes are shut to the supernatural power of God. We have those times of doubt, those times when fear can shout in our ears, when the devil comes and whispers in our ears, did God really say? All of that stuff. When we can't see a solution, when we can't see a way out. My favourite verse that has really meant a lot to me in the last 10 years is, trust in the Lord and lean not onto your own understanding. Because if there's one thing that I've learned is that I can't control everything, fix everything, and that God is full of surprises, amen? He's full of surprises. So back to Esther. Mordecai sends her a message and he says this, he says, do not think in your heart, Esther, that you will escape in the king's palace any more than all the other Jews. For if you remain completely silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place. But you and your father's house will perish. Yet who knows whether you have been born for such a time as this? Who knows whether you've been born for such a time as this. I think those words had such an impact on Esther. I think when she heard those words, it was a moment in time when, as she heard them with her ears, but something went off on the inside of her. Something exploded on the inside of her. She suddenly knew that it was her destiny. It was her destiny. Can you imagine being Esther? Let's hear from Esther. Let's hear from Esther. This is the lovely Esther. We're going to hear from her right now. She is Esther, and she is singing. If I died, what a decision to make. Some of you here, there's a couple of people here, and God's calling you to do something that is way out of your comfort zone. And all I can say to you is step forward in obedience. You can't see too far down the road, but God can. And sometimes, you know what? Sometimes I think that we think that faith is all about not feeling fear, but it isn't. Sometimes you just have to do it afraid. You just have to do it afraid. There's been many times when God's called me to do something and I've done it afraid, but I know that I've done it out of obedience, and I know it's been a sacrifice. But God spoke to Glenn and I many years ago in a decision that we had to make that was going to uproot and upplant our whole family. And we were mulling over this decision, and God called a prophet to actually pull us out of the crowd and say to us, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all of these things will be added unto you. That was it. God had spoken. There was no going back. Born for such a time as this. There are two words for time in the New Testament. The first is chronos, and that refers to clock time or calendar time. And then there's that other word for time, which is kairos. Anybody ever heard that? Kairos time. It refers to your opportune time. Okay, chronos is quantitative. It counts minutes, it counts months, it counts years. But kairos times capture the now time. It's a time when something special takes place. It captures moments. It's the critical moment or the appointed time. You may look back at your life and say, it was that time that changed me. For Rebecca, it was that time on the beach. For Jackie, it was that time out at Glimbley when she got hold of that flag. God has those appointed times for you. And I want to give you an example of someone who understood the power of kairos time, the power of a moment. In fact, it was a game changer. It was an absolute game changer for this country. Winston Churchill, somebody who's a little bit of a hero of ours, just loved the film. Anybody watch the film? I think there were 6 people in the cinema, including Glenn and I, and we were both crying at the same point in the film. Just really moved us. Winston Churchill had been warning to everybody who had listened that Hitler was dangerous, but nobody was listening. You know, sometimes people don't listen to the prophet. They don't want to hear the words of the prophet because they don't like what the prophet was saying. And I believe that Winston Churchill was certainly a prophet of his time, even though nobody was listening to him. It had come to crunch point, and the King of England had called Winston Churchill to Buckingham Palace, where he asked him to be Prime Minister and to form a new government for Britain. He knew that Winston was the man with the power for the hour. He knew he was the one person that he could trust in and rely on. Chamberlain had resigned, and Halifax didn't have the faith to win a war. And in his book, The Gathering Storm, Churchill says that he left Buckingham Palace not with the usual spring in his step that one would have being made Prime Minister, but he left with the sombre thoughts of the many months of suffering and struggling that lay ahead. Yet he was confident that he could pull Britain through the crisis. And he's quoted as saying this. He said, "I was conscious in that moment of a profound sense of relief. At last, I had the authority to give direction over the whole scene. I felt as if I was walking with destiny, and that everything in my past life had been a preparation for this hour and this trial. You know, you could look at the things in your life and the stuff that you've gone through, not understanding that those things are preparation for an appointed time and appointed hour. I'm sure that Liz never thought that she would be on a platform one day encouraging a group of women just from the story of her own life. And I'm sure that's had impact on many of you here today. I find it fascinating that a friend of Winston's who went with him to Harrow recalled a conversation that he had with Winston Churchill when he was just 16. And Winston Churchill, at age 16, said this. He said, "I can see vast changes coming over a now peaceful world. London will be attacked, and I shall save London and England from disaster." Wow. I'm sure if anybody heard a 16-year-old say that, they'd go, "Excuse me? You're a bit up yourself, aren't you? Who do you think you are?" But you know what it was? Winston knew in here. He knew that he knew that he knew. He knew in his Noah that all living to them and fitted to their talents. I'm never going to be. What a tragedy if that moment finds them unprepared or unqualified for that, because many of our their finest are simple, selfless acts of kindness that happen. I absolutely believe that God prepares us in life, forget about, but the things that He has for us to do. I don't know if you Matthew 25 verse about 14, my man trapped. But I was hungry, and I was literally following that. I was thirsty, and you gave rain. You imagine a stranger and children in a cave, you know they can't sleep, you know that they're going to get out of that cave, and all the strategies and the plans that were put around that. But there was one man, his name was John and it turns out he was the lead diver that went into the cave. When did you see your stranger to take those boys? And when I read this, I put this on Facebook and it captured my attention. He said, "I died for passion, and always one say to you, would have as much as you did it to one of the least. But the last 2 weeks was what I prepared in my entire life for." Can you imagine that? Something inside of him gave him a passion for diving. Something inside of him got him up in the morning to go out and to practice diving. Something on the inside of him caused him to pursue that girl with a knife. I was like, shut it up to my throat. There was a whole crowd around. You see, nothing in our life is random. All the experiences that we've had, including the hurts and the difficult times. One day you will have your moment when you are called to sit down with somebody, to encourage them, to say, "I've been where you've been, but listen to me, this is the truth." You can get out of the situation because there is a God who knows and a God who cares, a God that you can trust. He is for you and He is not against you. I remember the words of kindness of those who came to encourage Glenn and I 10 years ago when we were broken, when we were down and not quite down, that there is an answer, that there is a hope. And we would have random, Esther knew what she had to say, "I make sure that if I perish, I perish." She isn't being a drama queen, she just knows that we're really involved in what she's prepared to do what has to be done. Because she knows that being queen is no accident, it's no coincidence. Just last year, I was confidence. I find it interesting that in the whole of Esther, we do not see God with mentioned once. Do you know that? God is not mentioned once in the whole of Esther. We don't read anywhere that they turn to God and pray. But I didn't get the complex hospital and hand of God throughout the whole story. And I was sitting there. But I asked myself, how did a Jewish girl, Amanda, get married to a Persian king? Lots of people have that shouldn't happen. Doctor, but it did. Because of God. Receptionists. Why did she find favour with anyone who walked past because of God's providence? Why was it that one night when the king couldn't sleep, sleep. He woke up and he had this idea that he'd like to go to the palace. But it's chilly because it gets a little bit chilly. And I was like, actually, no, I'm freezing. And then as he's going to right where you are, he finds a man called Mordecai. He came back to me. He had this big tent blanket and he wrapped your hand. Wow. God laid it. I think God woke him up. I think God put that idea in his head. Wow. Because he had eyes to see. You know, so often why we ask the question why. Something when things go wrong in our lives, we forget that God uses people and circumstances to get us to where. You know, your Esther moments will come. There'll be times in my life when your Esther moments require you to stop and have your world interrupted, to be a safe pair of hands, to catch someone who's falling. Your Esther moments may be speaking out when given everybody else silent. Your Esther moments may require you to step forward in faith and obedience, knowing that there is a royal wedding to pay. That's what those three ladies. Did you not marvel at Megan as a wise mother? Okay, I'll say that. Megan mother out there and save the lives of unborn children. I watched her. And I watched her carry herself with our names may never be written in such great books. I watched her sitting in that pew, and I thought, what Christians are my lives. 1 minute, she was doing the hoovering in America, okay? The next minute, she's sitting in the same pew as the Queen of England, and she's watching her daughter marry a prince. How does that stuff? It could be tomorrow. How did I get to here? What I do know, she must do something that's going to come along in your world where you can be the answer. You can be the answer. Something that you do. There are moments in our lives when we have to understand, just as God sent a conversation, to be a conversation to our broken relationship. Just to give you looking at us. You say, I haven't got anything to give anybody, but you have. You have. That each and every one of us are an answer, that we can make a difference to somebody else's life, that God can use us as instruments of His glory, just as He did in the book of Isaiah. When Isaiah spoke back to God. When I first started hearing people say that they spoke back to God and God spoke to them, I thought they were mad. I just, I can clearly remember somebody saying, God told me, and I was a new Christian, and I just thought, yeah, right. So how did you do that? Write you a little note then, Mandy! Anna! Sharon! Yeah, who's that? That's what happened to Isaiah. God spoke to him one day and he said, who's going to go? He heard God speak, who's going to go? Who's going to go? Who's going to go for me? Who shall I send? And Isaiah answered back, and he answered the call of God on his life, and he said, here I am, send me. Esther knew that she was being called by the king because there was a greater call upon her life than what she could see. She was being called to save a nation. She was being called to save the Jewish people. As I said, you can all be the answer to somebody else's prayer because somebody has a need. And I often find that in the mundane of everyday life is hidden the miraculous. When your moment comes, it can come clothed in the ordinary and you might not recognise it. Some saw a bloke riding on a donkey into Jerusalem. They didn't understand that it was the Son of God. They didn't understand because it was just an ordinary moment. A number of years ago now, I was in an ordinary moment at home and I was just doing the washing up after Sunday dinner. And as I was doing the washing up, God put on my heart a lady in my church, and I had this sense that God wanted me to call her, to ring her. So I'm there doing the washing up, and I thought, yeah, in a moment, yeah, I'll do that in a minute I'll do that. But God started to get louder in my head, and He said, no, do it now, do it now, do it now. So I dried my hands and I got on the phone and I called this lady and I said, "Hi, it's Cathy. Are you okay?" And there was silence. And then I just heard sobbing. And I know this lady. She's strong. She's brave. She's one of those go-getters in life. She's tough. She's out there solving everybody else's problems. So to have her crying on the end of the phone, something's going on here. And I said, "Stay right where you are. I'm coming. Got in my car. I drove to her house. She answered the door. She was a wreck. She'd been crying. And I sat down with her. And I said, "I don't know what's going on, but I was sort of washing up." And God said, "Just phone you." And she said to me, "Cathy," she said, "I was going to take my life this afternoon." She said, "I had everything ready. I sorted everything out. I'd even mowed the lawn." Because she's like that. She's so organised. You know, I never used to understand suicide. But I do understand it now. I think it's when you get into a headspace where there's no hope. You can't see your future. You don't think that you have a future. And not only that, if you speak to anybody that has been on the brink of wanting to do that, you will find that they say, "There was a voice in my head, and it was saying this and that. You're not worth it. Nobody will miss you. It's never going to get any better." We know where that voice comes from. You know, today that lady has a beautiful little girl, and she's stepped into the call of God upon her life. And sometimes the enemy will try and take you out because he has some idea of your future. He has some idea that you one day will be affecting others' futures because you are going out and you are speaking. Where is Susie and where is Jackie? Come on, and Joe, I want you to come down here for a moment. This is not in my notes. I want